Thank you, Noah, for that kind introduction. It's truly an honor to be here today with so many leaders across our province committed to serving both God and our communities. As Noah mentioned, my name is Kayla de Regt, and I'm the Executive Director for Students First Alberta. Hard-headed, stubborn, rebellious, angry. These are words that described my preteen son. If any of you out there have teenagers at home, I'm sure you can relate to these behaviors. My son was no different. We struggled with his pushback on authority, and there were times where our home felt like a battlefield. We spent intentional time in prayer over my son, and we enlisted the help of faithful grandparents to walk alongside him in a mentorship role. In junior high, we saw a shift in his behavior. His anger began to melt away and was replaced with a deep-seated joy. We saw his desire to work with instead of against authority grow. This radical 180 can only be attributed to the work of the Holy Spirit in his life. The Spirit used faithful mentors to speak truth through love over him. We were deliberate at working with our son from home with close family, but what we didn't realize is at the same time, a teacher at his Christian school was also actively instilling the same godly attributes in our son as we were from home. Her influence in our son's life has become part of his testimony. And we saw firsthand how God used his Christian school experience to change the trajectory of his life. As Christian parents, we recognize that God has placed on us the primary responsibility to raise our children in the faith. When our kids become school-aged, it is a privilege to choose a Christian school where the faith formation work that is done at home will continue into their academics. This concept is based on Deuteronomy 6, verses 6 to 9, which says, "And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children and talk about them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." However, far too often, independent schools in this province are under attack. Groups like Public Interest Alberta have run campaigns to, I quote, "phase out all funding to private schools and homeschools and absorb charter schools into the existing public system." The ATA regularly publishes editorials and runs ad campaigns that promotes public education as the best and only option for this province. In 2018, under the NDP government, Bill 24, the Act to Support Gay Straight Alliances, was passed, which forced all schools in Alberta to adopt policies in support of the government's preferred LGBTQ ideology, undermining the faith teaching of Christian schools. And most recently, a petition to defund independent schools raised 123,000 signatures. Students First Alberta was launched during this last petition to push back and defend choice in education. Thankfully, the petition failed, and that left us with an opportunity to go on the offensive instead of always reacting defensively to these attacks. Currently, we have a government in power, as we heard today, that is very supportive of choice in education. This was demonstrated almost immediately when they were elected into power in 2020, when they introduced Bill 15, the Choice in Education Act, which states that parents have the prior right to choose the kind of education that their children receive. This bill also recognizes that independent schools, charter schools, and home education options are valuable and integral into providing education to students and parents. At Students First Alberta, we believe that kids are best served when their education can be matched with best fit options, whether that's independent, charter, home education, or even public school. Not only do we believe that this is an important freedom for all Albertans, the research backs education choice, showing that students who graduate from best fit schools have a much higher academic scores and success post-graduation. When our government creates bills and proposes policies that support our mission, we want to be a public voice validating those important steps. Students First is growing our voice in this province. We have over 6,600 people signed up on our website, and it is continuing to grow. We're also growing our social media presence, sending out monthly e-newsletters, attending conferences and events like this one, and publishing op-eds. With every grassroots initiative comes a call to action. What can you do? Let me suggest 3 actions today. First, the church and Christian schools should continue to foster strong communities of belonging that spread into our neighborhoods. A lack of family stability and community interaction has led to an increased level of classroom complexity and aggression that we've never seen before in this province. When a child enters school without having ever experienced community, it makes it very difficult to learn how to meaningfully interact with peers in group settings and manage relationships. More than ever, schools are becoming the first place where kids experience meaningful community. As Christians, we're privileged to be part of the broader church family. From a young age, our children experience community through participation in the body. By the time they reach school age, church children have experienced collective community through corporate worship, church education classes, and volunteerism. More than ever, Christians should be dedicating time to encouraging and strengthening the family unit and creating opportunities for connection. The positive effects of discipleship and local outreach missions that focus on serving community needs, healing broken families, and creating connections will trickle down into our schools. Second, thank you. Second, the church and Christian schools should be doing a full court press against an individualistic and postmodernism worldview which focuses on self and discovering your own truth. This harmful ideology produces kids who struggle to understand their identity, find a sense of belonging, and discover their purpose. Have you ever bristled at the mention of my truth? Society has been twisting the word truth and using it as a bully technique. Now, truth statements lie in the subjective realm with the caveat, for me, at the end. Any suggestion of objective truth is immediately labeled as oppressive and hateful. A postmodernist who is trying to dismiss a truth claim will do so by searching for the supposedly hidden bias of the person making the claim, and we can see this being played out in politics today. Critics of Bill 25, removing politics and ideology from Alberta classrooms, claim that, and I quote, when governments label certain topics, books, or symbols as ideological, the result is not neutrality, it's censorship. This quote is essentially saying that every person's view of truth should be celebrated and has a place in the classroom. When the foundation of learning is not a foundation at all, but a feeble attempt to build on thin air, the result is academic collapse and kids are left amidst the rubble in a heap of confusion. Conversely, by focusing on objective truth and facts, students have a stable foundation in which to build their own thoughts and ideas around. Like Minister Nicolaides has said today, education should be teaching kids how to think, not what to think. We should all be very concerned when our culture questions academics built on a foundation of objectivity. So church, Christian schools, rise up. Be bold in your proclamation of the truth and defense of the faith. Empower families in your congregations and societies to challenge cultural lies. Finally, consider calling your church congregants and society members to action. By sharing Students First Alberta with your church and school, supporters can sign up on our website. It's a very small step that allows us to present a strong, unified voice across our province to both government officials and to the public. The further reach we gain, the louder our voice will become. Government policymakers and officials are elected to hear the voice of the people, and we've heard this said already today. If the Christian community chooses to remain silent on issues that distort biblical truths, the only voice directing the paths and decisions of government will be secular. What if Moses refused to petition Pharaoh? What if Nehemiah decided to sit back and let Jerusalem lay in ruins? What if Paul shied away from preaching in the public square? The Bible is full of examples of faithful servants who prayerfully and respectfully influenced political leaders to create change. Christians have an opportunity to mobilize, Christians have an opportunity to mobilize a collective voice that can be used to influence policies and legislation that blatantly go against sound biblical doctrine. Christians should speak up and be a voice to their elected officials like we're seeing here today. We cannot stand around waiting for someone else to do the work. The time is now. Thank you.